Hi, welcome to Fairview Farm and Flowers. Thank you for joining us in the peony patch. Today we're going to talk really quickly about peonies, and they're one of my favorite flowers. My love for peonies started when I was a kid. We grew up in a town with tons of deer, and the only thing that we could grow in mass was peonies. Actually, these peonies here, they are the descendants, so to speak, of the peonies from my childhood, because when we moved to New Jersey, my mom dug up a bunch of them, and we've been dividing them, and everywhere we go, we bring them with us. I always called them the tuxedo peonies because that's where we lived. And now I know they're Festiva maxima, which is a great peony. It has this big, beautiful white head, a true peony fragrance, and this cute little stripe of magenta in here. It's awesome. So let's talk quickly about growing peonies in your yard. One, you can grow them in full sun and you can grow them in part shade, which is awesome because they're really adaptable. They don't need like the best soil ever, which is also really good, and deer don't bother them. They don't really get a lot of diseases either, but you want to make sure they have good airflow. After you dig and divide peonies, it'll take some time before they'll really start to bloom again. In fact, when you plant peony roots, you want to wait like 3 years before you really harvest them. So you'd come along for your new peonies that you've planted, and you'd actually take off all the buds for about 2 or 3 years. You want all that energy to go into root production, not flower production. But then you can see it's really worth the wait. So, how to get great peonies, because that's what we're all after. You can see here what we've done is we've trellised our peonies because they're in big rows. We have really sturdy T-posts and all of this tomato trellising wire. We're corralling them together. And the reason that we're doing this is the extra support gives them the opportunity to use more energy into growing their rootstock, growing beautiful flowers. That being said, this method isn't the best method if you are a home grower and you just have, some plants. Then you want to use those round grow-through stakes, and you want to get them on early so that the peonies can grow up through them. The support is really necessary, especially if you're going to leave them in the field with these big, beautiful blooms on them, because when it rains, these guys get so heavy and you want to give them support. Now, if you're picking your peonies to bring in to the home, you want to pick them more like, how about this guy over here? See this? Just starting to open. This one is going to be beautiful in the vase and give you a long vase life. Now you can also pick peonies to store them, which is really cool. So what you want to do is find peonies like these. We call this the marshmallow stage. So the bud has cracked, the peony is nice and soft, and what you can do is you just pick. You want to go in a little deep for your stem length, trim off foliage. You can also see I'm throwing the foliage in the pathways. That way it gets hit by the mower and all chopped up. You really don't want the foliage to be in your beds because that can lead to disease problems. So once I've trimmed this guy up like this, all of these I'll put together, I'll wrap them in newspaper, not wet, just dry, and I'll put them in my cooler just like this. So you could do this at home and put them in the crisper drawer of your fridge. You don't want them to get light on them. So when I say wrap them all up like a little package. And then over the course of about a month, anytime you want peonies, take them out of the fridge, give them a fresh cut, put them in water with flower food, and they'll bloom beautifully for you. So that's what we do to prolong our peony season. You also can look at all the different varieties of peonies, and when you do, you can see that some bloom early in the season and some bloom late in the season. So by buying rootstock of that whole window, you get a really long-lasting display of peonies. Another thing to get really big blooms is you want to look for things like this. This is one that I didn't get the side shoots off. See how there's two little guys here? You want to cut off all these little side blooms early on in the season when they're just teeny little buds. Because when you do that, it provides more energy for the main head and you'll get a bigger bloom. Now you can also leave some of these guys on because this is pretty decorative and interesting in the vase to have these little side tendrils as well. Peonies are pretty disease resistant, so you don't really need to focus too much on that. I will say though, at the end of the season, your peonies are gonna look pretty They might get some powdery mildew, maybe a little black spot. Don't stress about it too much. Once they're done flowering, deadhead them so that they're not putting energy into seed production. And then go ahead and just keep the foliage on them so they recharge that root. But if they get a lot of powdery mildew, you can just go ahead and cut off the foliage. That'll probably happen late fall. I do take all my foliage off before the winter. That way in early spring, when they're just coming on, I don't have to worry about damaging that new growth. So that's kind of the basics of peonies. They're a great flower. I hope you introduce them to your garden, and I'm really excited to design with them this season.